everybody. I can't believe we're already in February. The good news is nobody has died. I take that back. Nobody has died, but the Academy Awards appear to be dying.
Yeah.
And Tim, let me just put this out in front of you right now. They just announced this coming Tuesday, Academy Award nominations, 94th Academy Awards. This will be presumably the last Academy Awards from an academy over which Dawn Hudson, who has been CEO for 10 years or so plus.
Has it been that long? Yeah, really?
It's been about a decade. And the ratings have gone down pretty much every single year that she's been CEO. I'll let you make of that what you will. But she's leaving, and in my opinion, none too soon. Nice lady, but I don't think she's done a good job. And here, normally when we announce the Academy Awards, when they announce them, they'll bring on, like some not top tier movie stars, but someone you're like, oh yeah, he or she won supporting actor last year or the year before. It's usually people, it's usually like the Academy president or an actress who won supporting actress, or a supporting actor, or someone who has made movies. This year, they are being presented by Leslie Jordan, and I know people are like, "Oh, who the hell's Leslie Jordan?" He's the little guy from Will and Grace, the little guy with the high voice, and Tracy Ellis Ross from Blackish.
Yeah,
but these aren't movie people; these are TV people. You couldn't find any movie people to announce the movie nominations.
Yeah,
what's going on?
It's a thing, man. It's a thing, and look, for Hudson, I'm not sure it would have made any difference. She happened to be there. Her tenure was this tenure. Her tenure was the tenure, during which the movie industry has changed more than it probably has ever since the addition of television. Since television came in and movies went all freaky 50, 60 years ago. 70 years ago. And here she is, and it is what it is. I think the reason you don't see any movie stars, you aren't going to see any movie stars. What is that? Next Tuesday morning?
Yeah, next Tuesday morning, February 8th.
Announced those awards is because at a minimum, the line between these things has blurred, right? There are a great many movies, which we, talk about. I have, on Film Week, the radio show, which have never been in a movie theater. Every week we talk about these movies that have never been in a movie theater and never will be in a movie theater. So, that line has been blurred, I think has something to do with it. And then, if you're a movie star, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to go and, I may not have any reason to do that. If I'm a movie star, I might be exactly wrong about that. Maybe if you're a movie star, that's a thing you should have lobbied to do, right? I'm a movie star, and I'm gonna go and maybe, but it could go either way. But that line has been blurred. That's the big thing, I think. And there you have it.
And I think that line needs to be blurred back. Spielberg was the guy who was pushing for for longer windows, and Netflix pushed back hard. And I think if we get to a day where Netflix is winning Academy Awards for movies that have never actually been seen or available to most people in a movie theater, it's the end of the business. It's the end of the Oscars. And I don't even like that Netflix is now a member of the MPA. The MPA, which used to be the MPAA, is for movie distributors. It's a lobbyist for movie distributors, not people who make movies, for people who distribute movies. So, Netflix should go join some other lobbying organization, but I think their presence in the MPA is bad, is a mistake. And what I would do is I would say for the Academy Awards, for eligibility, you need to be a feature-length film that was released not just into one theater before midnight on December 31st in LA or New York. No.
Yeah, which is the thing that Netflix did.
No. I would up that. I would say you need to have a 6-month window before you wind up on streaming. 6 months. 6 months. Make it a half a year. You need to be in theaters for a half a year. And you need to be not just in LA or New York. You need to have opened in LA and New York and 2 other cities somewhere else in the United States. Chicago, San Francisco, Houston, Miami, I don't care, Philadelphia, you name it. And You need to have played at some point in at least 100 theaters.
That's all really tough. It's not so tough in that it wasn't, the sort of de facto dynamic 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. It was really just, everything you said was probably what needed to happen. Now, though, what would make that tough has more to do with revenue sources and revenue streams than anything else.
Well, I'm trying to keep the theaters afloat. I'm trying to keep distribution alive and keep the theaters afloat.
Look, the good folks over at Disney Plus and the good folks over at, Netflix and Amazon and all that kind of stuff, they don't give a damn about at all, literally. In some ways, they would be very happy if every theater, every big theater anyway, in this, every little theater, I should say, it would just close. They would love that.
I know.
And force everyone, in front of the television. So, and the thing of it is, they have so much money. The Netflix has an inordinate amount of money, far and away more money to play with making movies than the movie industry has to make movies.
But dude, people are now looking at Netflix. Their stock took a hit. People are starting to say Netflix the competition has caught up. A lot of people are saying Disney Plus is going to bury Netflix, and they're saying that the competition is catching up. And it may have already caught up, and Netflix may have already hit its peak. It might be a mature company now.
It might be, but that's a lot. That's pretty powerful, mature company.
It is. But it's interesting because there's this really, really terrific podcast with Michael Eisner, and I'm forgetting the name of the journalist, New York Times journalist, who does this weekly podcast. She's very funny. I can't believe I can't remember her name. But it's she did about a 45, 50-minute sit down with Michael Eisner. And he's very forthcoming. And I agree with most of what he says. I don't agree with all of what he says because he comes at it from a CEO standpoint. He's talking about growing your company. And he talks about branding, that the branding of all of these entities, Marvel and Lucasfilm and Pixar, all these things that he acquired, that was designed to help Disney weather the storm because Netflix, he woke up one morning. This is a really interesting story. He woke up one morning and he realized that all these Disney movies on Netflix, he says that it was like, and I think his analogy goes like this. He says, it's like we were selling a third world company nuclear weapons to use against us. Oh. And I thought that's really interesting. He just called Netflix a third world country. Yeah. But that's when they pulled all their licenses and they pulled all their content back. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And right now, Netflix. And
that's when Netflix decided to become a full-fledged production studio because they realized eventually all of these entities that we're providing are going to take their stuff back and we're going to have a library of our own.
But the mistake Netflix is making, and Ted Sarandos has said that, is I think he said something to the effect of, hopefully I'm not misrepresenting, that Netflix's brand is that we have no brand, which I think is just dumb because people need to trust a brand. Iger, I was saying Eisner, Robert Iger, Bob Iger in this podcast goes. It's funny, Eisner to Iger. I'm getting my Disney CEOs convoluted in my head. Why, if there were a screenplay, someone would say, I'm sorry, you cannot have two consecutive CEOs with names that sound similar. You can't go from Eisner to Iger. You're just going to have to change your name. It's too confusing. But no, Iger says that the whole Marvel logo, that big red logo, it was very deliberate. They wanted it to be big and logo and brandy and to impress itself on everybody before every movie. That before you watch a Marvel movie, that Marvel logo punches you in the face, right? And you now begin to trust that brand the same way you trust that Disney castle, the same way you trust, Luxor Jr. bouncing out, boink, 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 and then jumping on the Pixar eye. Yeah. I mean, these are logos and they're well thought out. And that's what you need. You need a brand that people trust. If I look at Netflix, okay, I get the end. Schwung, it shows up in front.
You get that sound. I mean, that's the thing. You hear that.
But what do I associate it with? What do I associate it with?
Well, because it's. Let's remember that there was a moment when Disney, right, decided that they needed Hollywood pictures that they needed. What was the other one? The Hollywood Pictures was like
Touchstone.
Touchstone.
It was Touchstone, right? Hollywood.
And basically Disney was G. Hollywood was, kind of RE, PG-13, RE kind of stuff, they could do there. And then Touchstone was, PG-13, all that kind of stuff. So it was all, pointed at very specific audiences, but it was all under the Disney umbrella. All right. Hollywood Pictures went away, 20 years ago?
Something like that. I mean, honestly, I think it still lives as a brand for things that they don't know what else to do with. Because I think there was a Hollywood Pictures branded movie like 2 years ago, and it's the only one. It's the only one over the last 15 years, and it went straight to DVD or something. I can't remember what it was, but it was clear that Disney couldn't offload this to anybody. Didn't know what else to do with it. It didn't fit with any of the existing brands. So they went into the closet and they pulled out Hollywood. They're like, well, I missed that completely. But there was a moment when you had all these Hollywood pictures, and that was Disney's sort of notion then, right? All of these different brands. So Netflix. What would be bright for Netflix to do would be to do what Disney did back then, so that under that Netflix umbrella, there would be these brands, and like, Blumhouse, the horror, and they try to do that a little bit or whatever. But at the moment, it's all about subscriptions for them. Yes. As long as they maintain and grow. Everybody talks about grow. You got to grow. Do you? Do you have to perpetually grow? Do you? I'm not sure that you do. You don't. And this goes down, one of my favorite rabbit holes, which is that this, and again, Iger talks about this too. She asks him, it's very funny. Really, people have to listen to this. For example, why can I not think of her name? This is going to kill me. Hang on a second. I'm going to
go look it up.
I'm going to go look it up. But at one point, she's talking about, some of her anxieties about, streaming and all that. And he says, well, you need to go to Disney World. And she says, yeah, no, I don't. And he says, he says, well, I was just there the other day. And this is, it takes some cojones to say this to Robert Iger. She says, were you really? Good for you. That's great. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. It's so good. It really, I don't listen to a lot of other podcasts. It's Sway. Kara Swisher. Kara Swisher is a New York Times journalist, and she has her Sway podcast, SWAY. And go check it out. It's if you're listening to us, you could certainly spend some time listening to them. It's a terrific podcast.
Yeah, I love her. She's very droll. She pops up on a whole bunch of
she's so droll. But what she says, that Joseph Gordon-Levitt, she recently talked to him, and he said that Silicon Valley basically now owns Hollywood. And he makes the good point. He says, I don't think anybody could ever own Hollywood. They may be coming in with a lot of money, and scale is a factor. And that's one of the areas where I disagree with him, is that he seems to think that the companies that'll survive need huge scale. Like, that's why Murdoch got out and gave 20th over to Disney, because he couldn't see them growing enough. They had a conversation, and Murdoch was concerned.
That growing thing again. Yeah.
That growing thing. You got to be big. You got to be scale. I don't agree with that.
No.
And the reason I don't agree with that is this. And this always happens. It happened in the early days of Hollywood.
When the Japanese came
even further back. I'm talking about when Warner Brothers bought First National. About all the way up to when Disney bought Miramax.
Golf Western? Golf and Western, Paramount. Yeah, and that started putting.
Look, little companies can make an impact. They can. Little companies can make concentrated impacts. Today, for example, we are going to be talking about what is always the elite stuff that we cover every week. It's Criterion.
Yeah.
It's Criterion, a privately held small company that doesn't actually make their own content, but they have a brand that is highly respected, and they have a place in the marketplace, and scale ain't never going to erase Criterion. It just
I can tell you this, and you and I lived through this. We lived through the rise and fall of Miramax, and I'm not talking about Harvey's Bob's shenanigans. I'm talking about that company when it was Miramax, right? Just those two brothers making these fantastic freaking films. And then boom, Disney. And just again, not the shenanigans, just that period after Disney bought it, it became an irrelevant entity. It wasn't because it wasn't a Miramax anymore. It just had the name. And they didn't, and the movies that came out of it during that period were not quote unquote Miramax movies anymore.
And this brings us full circle. And this brings us full circle. And then we'll get into the titles. But this brings us full circle. Silicon Valley operates on a principle of scalability. The idea that everybody always needs a new version of the old software. The computers are getting faster and faster. More people are buying computers. There is no ceiling. You just you just assume that you're going to sell more and more to more and more people. So you just make a ton of stuff and you just blow it out hard. Hollywood has never operated on that principle. Hollywood has always operated on a principle of scarcity, which is that things are precious because they are rare. There are only 52 weekends in a year. There are only a certain number of theaters with a certain number of seats that can only open a certain number of films on those 52 limited weekends. And people only have a certain amount of time to allocate to seeing those very special movies that are the special movies that open only in a few theaters, only on a few weekends per year. All of that means that these things are ordained as special. So when a Spider-Man movie opens, or look, there's a reason why Paramount has held back Maverick, the Top Gun sequel, for 2 years, because they know that it's special. They know that when it opens, it needs to open in a lot of theaters. So they're waiting. They're biding their time. These things are special because they are scarce, not scalable. And audiences recognize that. Netflix operates on a principle of scalability. We're going to make as much stuff as we can, and we're going to load up the platform so that it's just filled. Well, now that's great. There's a ton of stuff there, but it's not special anymore. It just isn't. It's too much. And I know a lot of people at that point, you start looking for what is scarce, what is unique, what is special. And the stuff on Netflix that is scarce is the stuff that has built a reputation over time because it is scarce in terms of quality. Stranger Things, Ozark, the Queen's Gambit, these are the things that people kind of zero in on. It's a handful. Lost in Space, right? Yeah. So these are the things that people are setting apart and saying, okay, this is special. But once those shows run their course, then what?
Well, there's an interesting thing that happens with streaming that is the opposite of what happened with movies too, right? So that specialness and that scarcity that you talk about that came from the old school movie industry was there because the industry itself had the power to decide. This is going to be special. This is going to be scarce. These are the ones, and they decided and handed it to the audience. With streaming, it's the exact opposite way around. It's the audience that decides. The audience decides that the Queen's Gambit is the best thing they've ever seen, or Squid Game, or whatever. The audience decides. And then the audience tells each other. And then that thing becomes Bird Box. But you can put Bird Box on if you want, and the audience doesn't like it, doesn't come, doesn't stream it, doesn't go. And it's not going to be a hit. It won't, because the audience gets to decide with streaming what the hits are. And then they literally tell each other. So last night, goddaughter Sai's in there when you're watching some series called The Girl in the Window Across the Street, looking through the window in the way, whatever it is. I can't use, it's some dumb long title. People out there know it. Yeah. And everybody's talking about it, right? And I'm like, okay, let's cue this thing up and we watch it, and I'm like, really? This is the thing that everybody's going all goofy over? And I got through 1, I got through 2, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make myself a vodka soda because this is not, the people have decided that that's a hit show. I don't like it.
Yeah.
And I ain't watching the rest of it. I'm not going to. No, I don't care what the people say. So, it'll be interesting. It's interesting that has been reversed. And it's interesting. Bird Box, I thought, was one of the dumbest fucking movies I ever saw in my life. But it was this gigantic thing the people picked.
Well, but also I think during the pandemic, people's standards have gotten a little lower, and their standards will go up again when really good stuff starts going up. I mean, you know how this is in LAFCA. We're sitting there and we're voting on the best pictures of the year. Well, we're choosing from stuff that would probably not make our top 10 in any other year, but it's what we've got to work with, so we're going to work with it.
Yeah.
And the one thing that Netflix, and I'll end here, the one thing Netflix lacks is what they take pride in lacking, and I think it's a mistake, which is they're not a studio in the traditional sense that they develop material. They just have a lot of doors, and a lot of people come through those doors, and they just want to generate a lot of material. And that's why nearly every movie on Netflix, I mean, you know what this is like on Film Week, right? We'll get a Netflix film and you're like, oh crap, I swear. You read the description, it's like a regular action film or a drama or a comedy. But you know, it's 135 minutes long.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like some teen romance, like Julie and her friends go to London and have a great time. And if Paramount had made that in the 1980s, that would be a 95-minute movie, head to tail, in and out, because we got to put them in theaters and we want to get 4 screenings in a day. On Netflix, they don't have to worry about that. So so the director gets to basically put the rough cut up there. Their assembly cut, and it wants 135 minutes of just horrendous crap. Then you just want to cut 35 minutes out of it.
Yeah. But the longer they keep you there streaming, the longer they keep you there streaming, and which is what they're actually measuring in the first place. And again, like as you said, Netflix is not a studio. Netflix it's not a movie studio. It's not about curation. It's about generation.
This is why I still say that at the end of the day, Netflix is going to be absorbed by someone else. They have too much debt. They simply have too much debt. And the only way, they're not going to be assuming more debt to buy somebody else. That's not how these things work. The company with the debt, like AT&T, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, is the company that runs to someone else and says, help us with our debt situation. Please bring us into the fold. And that's how AT&T and Warner got sucked into that Discovery deal, which I think is going to be good. I'll eat my words if I'm wrong, but I think that's going to be a good thing. So I think Netflix will be absorbed by Sony at some point. That's my prediction. And I think Sony is looking at that, and I think they're licking their chops. And I believe Netflix will effectively then become Sony's streaming operation.
Interesting. I can remember when Sony was a technology company. They sold things, and
they still do, a lot of them. They do. And I think, and then I also think that at some point Universal and Paramount are going to merge. I think that's inevitable, and I think that's actually a really good fit, to be honest, because whenever you go to Universal Studios, the one thing that you realize is you guys are picking some pretty crappy movies for your rides and your themes. You know what? The Secret Life of Pets is not an excuse for a theme park attraction.
Hey, dude, they just took down the Waterworld thing.
Oh man,
2 or 3 or 4 years ago, which was nuts. That movie was a flop, but they had already spent the money to build a thing, so they left it there for 25 years.
But we'll say this: their Jurassic Park ride is terrific. That's terrific. It is terrific.
Now, I know we got to do the show. There might be some issues with the government with respect to all of those mergers that we just talked about. Because it would literally be reversing what they broke up almost 100 years ago now.
Very true.
So yeah.
And I'm the first person to say that I don't like these mergers. I like 20th as a separate studio. I like all of these things as separate studios, but we've seen this before. MGM UA, RKO ceased to exist and got folded in with their library folded in with Warner. Most of the old MGM movies are now in the Warner library. I mean, these things have happened before. So, First National and again, 20th Century Pictures, which exists again because they don't want the Fox name on it. Well, it was originally separate from Fox. It was, Zanuck created 20th Century Pictures. And then that went folded into William Fox's Fox Film Company, and it became 20th Century Fox. So these, again, this is fluid. This is the history of Hollywood. It happens over and over. But what we really need are new companies. We need that next Miramax. We need that that new company. That's what we need. And we need those soon.
IRS Media. When that man, one false
great
all
logo.
this company, all gone, dude, all gone. Hey,
all right. Well, I'm going to hit off some keynotes. We got some great keynote titles here that we haven't been able to get to in a few weeks because it's still a pandemic. We're still battling all of the limitations associated with that. But got some really really cool movies, some really cool classics. I've tried to theme these up to the best that we can. A couple of old Charles Bronson movies that they have released, Breakheart Pass and Chato's Land. Both of these are terrific. I don't
love Chato's Land. Yeah.
I didn't love these growing up, but I kind of love them now. And a lot of it is nostalgia, but a lot of it is that I think I understand them better now. Both Westerns. The Breakheart Pass is kind of like a Western noir, a Western mystery of sorts, based on an Alistair MacLean novel. But it's got some. Look, Bronson is great. He's that granite faced guy that we love in all these movies. This was made in 1975, kind of closer to the end of his legit career. But some wonderful supporting performances. His wife Jill Ireland, of course, shows up, and you always look at her and you just think, boy, you're in a. Jill Ireland married Charles Bronson and married her. It's just a beautiful couple. Yeah. Charles Durning is great in this thing. Richard Crenna is absolutely wonderful. Ben Johnson, good old standby in a lot of Westerns. So that's a fun movie. Comes with a Berger, Mitchell, and Thompson audio commentary. We've had them before. And just Berger and Mitchell do the commentary on Chato's Land. Now, Tim, talk about Chato's Land for a sec.
So Chato's Land, first of all, Charles is playing, a Native American. Can't do that anymore. but I cop to it. I get it. That's what he's doing. But dude, Jack Palance, James Whitmore, in this movie, it's just this wicked movie. It's full of all of these people, these faces that Richard Jordan, Ralph Waite, and just Simon Oakland, just all these faces from that era. This is right before the Valachi papers, maybe 71, 72, something like that. And it's just this wicked Western with Charles Bronson sort of like dipped in, and all tanned up or whatever they did to get him that color that he is. And, playing this, and he's just this stone-faced guy with this headband. I think I walked around with one of those headbands on for like a summer. It's just a hell of a movie, man.
It is. And Palance is leading a posse of old Confederate soldiers, so you're inclined to want to really see him get theirs. And it's pretty great. Ralph Waite is in this as well. The dad from the Waltons, and Victor French even shows up, which is kind of a weird thing. He was a big deal, if everybody remembers, on Family.
Yes. So, this is fantastic. It's fantastic.
And there's also an interview with the screenwriter Gerald Wilson on here. So that's a lot of fun. Good old Michael Winner movie. Yeah. And then we've also got, Vera Cruz with Gary Cooper, and Burt Lancaster. This is a 1954 Western. Gary Cooper kind of closer to his High Noon moment here. He's an older Gary Cooper, right? He's a little more tired Gary Cooper. But this is actually a lot of fun. It's directed by Robert Aldrich, who did tons of great noir and a few really, really good Westerns. One of the great old standbys, Dirty Dozen, maybe the most famous film that he ever made. And it's just a rock solid Western. Takes place during the 1866 revolution in Mexico. Got a great historical backdrop. And
I can't think of any other movie that Gary Cooper.
I think this may be the only one.
The only one, right? This would have been like the Pacino, like Heat. Pacino, the only one. Yeah, interesting.
And an Alex Cox commentary. And as much as I love all these Alex Cox commentaries, I keep asking myself, dude, why don't you direct again? Repo Man. Make a Repo Man sequel. Something, anything. Alex Cox was booted from the Writers Guild. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Like 30 years ago, because he scabbed during the strike.
Oh.
But that's such a punk Repo Man thing to do, isn't it?
Yes, exactly right. So during that strike, he went out and did something.
Yeah, he kept working. I don't know that he scabbed, but he just kept working. He was a WGA member, and he's like, "Oh crap, I'm not going to take the hit just because you guys are on strike. I'm not on strike." So he kept working, and they were very vindictive because he's a name. A lot of people don't get booted, but he's a name, and you're expected to toe the line if you're that status. But
no,
anyway.
interesting. I did not know that. That's interesting.
He may have quietly rejoined. I don't know, but I'd like for him to make a movie again.
Yeah, make a movie.
And then we also have Homebodies, which is this movie that completely slipped me by. I was probably too young at the time. 1974. This is one of those. You almost want to say it like started as a social commentary movie, and then just kind of lost its way somewhere around the development process. But it's this very, very strange kind of horror comedy about old people in an old tenement that's condemned, and the only way that they can manage to stay in the tenement is by basically starting to kill people. There you go. That's it. It's like, and I could see how this was probably originally like an anti-Robert Moses movie with a social, right? You can see that development meeting, right? And then somebody says, what if they start murdering people? And now it's a horror comedy and it just goes off the rails. But it is kind of a strange little genre thing from 1974. Feels a little Rosemary's Baby-ish at times. Mm-hmm. But I actually like it. Larry Yust directed it. He does an audio commentary, and so there's an interview with the producer, and it's called Homebodies, and it's a funky little movie. Yeah. We got a couple of Rock Hudson pictures here. Come September with Gina Lollobrigida, Sandra Dee, and Bobby Darin, and then Rock Hudson and Kirk Douglas in The Last Sunset, another Western. Oh, yeah. So the Last Sunset is. It's kind of a standard star vehicle. It's nothing particularly great. Really good Ernest Gold score. Also directed by Robert Aldrich again. Kind of a lower tier a little bit. This was made in 1961. It's a little schmaltzy and melodramatic and whatnot. Kirk Douglas really, really overacts like crazy. But I can't think of another actor whom we love to see overact like Kirk Douglas. Yeah. Because when he gets angry and he starts spitting, he just gets into that Kirk Douglas mode. You're a degenerate old man. So I mean, dimple thing. A lot of great face. Kurt and Rock. I don't think they did any other movies together either. But Carol Lindley and Joe Cotton and just Jack Elam. Dalton Trumbo wrote the screenplay. Kind of phones it in a little bit. I think it's not top tier. But Dorothy Malone, Joseph Cotton, Neville Brand. It's a good cast. The Last Sunset, and it's got a film critic Nick Pinkerton commentary on it. The other one, Come September, I absolutely adore. Yeah. Absolutely adore Come September. This is just such a delightful movie. It's not just because I adore Gina Lollobrigida and because I think that Sandra Dee and Bobby Darin, who were married at the time, are just absolutely adorable. But it just has that, Rock Hudson had that twinkle in his eye, right? Yeah. And this is the moment when in his career, when he's doing this stuff. This is 1961. And Gina Lollobrigida is beautiful. Robert Mulligan, who of course did The Miracle Worker and a lot of other great movies, directs, and it's just colorful and beautiful and sweet. And it's it's kind of it's two different couples, right? There's the older couple and the younger couple, and they're sharing an Italian villa, and it gets a little bit Three's Company like at points, and there's a little bit of farce going on, but I'll tell you, it's a really, really fun movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's fluffy, but it's wonderful.
The ridiculously young Joel Grey is in that.
Oh, movie. Yes.
Ridiculously young Joel. As young as I've ever seen him. Yeah.
Speaking of, you know what I threw on last night? It's hilarious. I literally got scolded for this morning because this is how it is, right? So I'm going to give you a little peek behind the curtain. So I'm sitting there, I'm trying to do work. Like I really try to work so hard every night because as soon as the girls are in bed, I try to get some quiet time and, do some writing and do some watching. And that's where I do a lot of my film week watching and a lot of watching for this podcast. But sometimes I get so freaking tired. I just fall asleep. I just fall asleep on the couch and wake up at like 2:30 or 3 in the morning. And I'm like, oh crap, I didn't get anything done. So I have the TV on. I was watching Cabaret. Speaking of Joel Grey, I'm like, I have not seen Cabaret in just so long. I'm going to put Cabaret on because Cabaret is on HBO Max. So why the hell not? So I put it on, and there was a point when I was getting really, really tired. It was a shot of Liza looking very Liza-y. And I was like, I do this to myself. I'm so stupid. At a certain point, I was like, I'm just going to close my eyes for just like 5 minutes, And then I'll pause the movie. I'll close my eyes for 5 minutes, and then I'll get back to it. Naturally, I just fell asleep. for hours, never got back to it, turned the TV off, or the TV went off, went to bed. This morning, my wife comes out, turns the TV on. What is frozen on the TV right where I had paused it the night before, because that's how Apple TV works. Yeah. There's Liza. And she looks at me, and she says, and she goes, really? And there it was. There it was. Oh, that's my life. That's my life. Okay. So, a couple of war movies here. To Hell and Back, the Audie Murphy story. Yeah. Starring, believe it or not, Audie Murphy.
Audie Murphy. Yeah.
So before Clint Eastwood decided to take those 3 Marines who stopped the terrorist attack on the train to cast them as themselves, Audie Murphy was cast as himself in his own story, To Hell and Back. Now, Audie Murphy won the Medal of Honor, World War II hero, the whole thing, short little guy, really an amazing story. He's not bad at playing himself.
No, he gets away with it. He played a couple of cowboys, and some other, he had a little acting career there for a second.
Yeah.
But the only one he ever really got right was himself. The rest of it was just not. No.
But the funny thing about the 3 guys in the Clint Eastwood film, title of which I always forget, is that they are all over the map.
Oh yeah.
Like one of them is really, really bad at playing himself. One of the white guys. He's really, really, he's terrible. And you're like, dude, this is you. And you suck at being you. You're terrible. And then the black guy, he's really good at himself, but he's like a TV show host now. Like he's really good with media. He nails it. He's the only one that's like, now I believe that what happened, I believe this really happened. And then the other guy's kind of between them. He's sort of, he's kind of trying to get it. But the one guy who's bad at himself, how do you let that happen?
It's nerves. It's just nerves. But Clint, I put that on Clint though. Clint, hey, look, kid, relax. It's you. It's just you. Nuts. But whatever. That's okay.
Well, anyway, Audie Murphy, To Hell and Back, 1955, 10 years or so after the events that it depicts, and he still looks young. He's good on it. Yeah. You know what? It got an audio commentary here by filmmaker and historian Steve Mitchell, which is pretty good. And, it's fine. Jet Pilot with, John Wayne, Howard Hughes, man. It's, what do you want? This is one of those Howard Hughes produced things from the late 50s. It's very muscular and macho, and, it's a Cold War action thing. I don't know if it feels, does this work for you still? Something like Jet Pilot, or does it feel just dated? It feels dated to me.
Yeah, von Sternberg. It's a little dated, but I think I like that title at the time. When I saw this on television, of course, in the 70s. And at the time, that title was all of me, just, Jet Pilot,
Right.
You couldn't even use that title today, even if the film were still set in 1957. Nobody says that anymore. And the film feels like that too. Nobody does this anymore. Nobody behaves this way anymore.
Yeah.
Janet Leigh sort of. So anyway, yeah. John Wayne was way too old to be a jet pilot anyway. By 1957, jet pilots are like 25, 22.
Well, I will say this. The Russians were the bad guys back then.
Yeah, they're the bad
guys again.
Come full circle. I was thinking when I joined the Air Force, he's in the Air Force. That's the Air Force that they're in. When I joined the Air Force in 1979, the Russians were the bad guys.
Yeah.
The wall and all that kind of stuff. By the time I got out of the Air Force in 1985, everything was sort of coming apart. So we had to find a new enemy. And for a while there, it was for a while it was Colombian drug dealers, actually.
Yeah.
And then, like in the James Bond movies.
I know. I hated that. That was the worst.
Which one was that? Tim Dalton.
It was a Timothy Dalton one. Yeah. It was, Robert, what's his name? Played the pock-faced Colombian drug.
Yeah, Robert Davi.
Robert Davi. It was absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
Do you remember when Robert Davi did some lounge singing at one of our LAFCA dinners? Do you remember?
Yeah. Everybody got the DVD. I got it. It's right over there.
So weird.
Very weird. Nice voice, but
beautiful voice. But what I thought too, it's like Robert Davi just turned into Sinatra, and he's walking around serenading everybody. And I hope he doesn't come to my table, because I'll look really embarrassed. It was a very strange moment. Anyway, The Green Man is a really, really cool British indie from 1957. directed by Robert Day, starring Alistair Sim, the same Alistair Sim that we know from Christmas Carol. But he's playing. What he's playing is kind of like the bad version of Steed from the Avengers. He looks like Steed. He's got the same outfit and the hat and the suit and the whole thing. But he's an assassin by night. But by day, he's a watchmaker, clockmaker guy. So it's a weird little quirky British movie from the time. It's technically a comedy, but it's got some really dark edges to it. And Terry Thomas is the one thing that consistently reminds you that it's a comedy, because Terry Thomas isn't capable of doing anything serious. Never has been. Oh. The diastema and the voice is. So, but anyway, that's a fun little film. The Green Man. And then we got a super 3D quadraphonic sound thing from the 3D Film Archive, a restoration of Dynasty. No, not the regular TV show. This is a martial arts film from 1977 that was it's actually kind of a weird anomaly in the history of martial arts films too. And it's a little strange that it's coming out from Kino, because this would normally be something whose rights reverted to a Hong Kong company. Yeah. But so I'm not quite sure how this wound up happening. Nonetheless, it's clearly came to the 3D Film Archive. Gotta say, it doesn't quite work, the 3D part of it with the martial arts. It feels very dated and weird, but it's kind of a crazy, it's a period wuxia film. I won't get into the plot because it'll make no sense to you. It's a whole Tang Dynasty, blah, 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 blah. But, it is an interesting artifact of the period, and it's got some great extras on it. There's a restored 3D comic book called The House of Terror. There are stereo slide presentations from Eric Drysdale that kind of give you an impression of how the technology worked. And then these cool little other 3D featurettes. So one's a music video, one's a kind of a lens system featurette. It's really a nice overall introduction, not just to a 3D movie of the period, but to the kitsch that surrounded the technology at the time. So really like that. Also got a couple of Tallulah Bankhead movies. If you don't know Tallulah Bankhead, Tallulah was the best. She was like this just, it's funny that there. You can look at Betty Davis, you can look at Joan Crawford, all the kind of early feminist icons who were tough ladies, Barbara Stanwyck. We had a ton of them in movies at the time. They were tough. They dish it back to the men. You could never get them on edge. Some of them were murderers. So, there were some incredibly strong ladies, but man, Tallulah Bankhead was just in a league all of her own. Part of it was the voice. Part of it was the attitude. And part of it was that these are pre-code movies, and Tallulah could do any old damn thing she wanted to. And these two films, I think, are both really cool. One is called Devil and the Deep, which is a double entendre that I don't think you could ever come close to getting away with that even today. Tallulah Bankhead and a very young Gary Cooper, as well as Charles Laughton and Cary Grant. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Get out of here, baby.
Get out of here. And then there's also The Cheat. So both of these, the sexual politics in these things are really, really fascinating. I would say The Cheat is probably the more scandalous of them, made in 1931 when you could pretty much do absolutely anything. Yeah. And it's an upper society, mid society, how would I put this? Relationships. Let's just say it's about the complications of relationships, and when you introduce gambling and all this other stuff. So, it really has a lot of interesting pre-code stuff to it. And then Devil in the Deep is, just a wonderful, kind of military, story with the melodramatic overtones to it. And, Tallulah is the woman in the middle of all these guys playing out all their testosterone issues. Charles Laughton is freaking creepy, and Cary Grant and Gary Cooper look gorgeous. And I would almost say Cary Grant is taking notes from Gary Cooper in this movie.
Oh, really?
You can see stuff where Cary's like, I think that guy really knows what's going on. And Gary Cooper is saying things like, yes, you might want to sort of imitate my voice with a British accent.
And that's another interesting. I don't think Gary and Cary did another film together.
Well, because it's the screenplay thing, right?
Yeah.
Someone must have said we can't have Gary and Carrie in a movie together because audiences will be confused.
Yeah,
One of you has to change your name.
Is it interesting? Because Gary, he was just right there in the middle, where he was, older, fairly young in this, older in that other one that we with Burt Lancaster.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting.
Yep. William Dieterle's The Accused from 1948, starring Loretta Young and Robert Cummings, is a little salacious. It's a noir. It involves a murder that is kind of sexually themed, and winds up going in some very unexpected directions. Loretta Young is great. Robert Cummings is great. I'm not usually a Robert Cummings fan. I think he's a little bit soft.
Yeah.
He's usually the guy like the other guy, right? You couldn't get Carrie or Gary. You went with Robert Cummings.
Yeah.
That was kind of one of those deals. But actually, it's really, really well put together. William Dieterle, rock solid. Hal Wallace produced this thing for Paramount in 1949. It was released in 49, I think made in 48. Anyway, audio commentary by Eddie Von Mueller, film historian. We've also got Deported, which doesn't quite mean the same thing in 1950 that it does now, but it kind of did. And this stars Marta Torin and Jeff Chandler, kind of second-tier stars.
Yeah.
Directed by Robert Siodmak, 1950. Film historian Eddie Mueller also does the commentary here. It's this is kind of a bit of a throwaway from the time, but it's still. It's okay. It's basically about a guy who was deported to Italy, and then he winds up having to make a go of it in Italy. Doesn't the title has less to do with the plot than you would think, but it's got its moments.
I always like Jeff Chandler flicks. A lot of noir pops up in a lot of noir.
But he's one of those guys that never really hit it big, right?
No. Yeah.
It's just he was always there, but he just never really blew up. The way you would have expected a guy that looked like that too.
Yeah.
Kind of also on that same level is 1941's Among the Living, which is pretty solid B movie that has a few A people in it. Frances Farmer is in this. Susan Hayward before she kind of blew up big. Harry Carey. It's a good solid little kind of B thriller. That has a twin plot to it. And I won't tell you kind of how the twin thing works, but it's madness and twins and it's a noir. The Mystery of Edwin Drood. You ever see this, Tim?
No.
The Mystery of Edwin Drood. It's a Claude Rains movie from 1935, really early Claude Rains movie. And it's based on the unfinished novel of Charles Dickens. He never finished it. So but they apparently just had enough to finish it for the movie. And you can kind of tell that it's unfinished because the movie, it sort of wraps itself up pretty hastily, but it's really good Dickensian, Victorian level noir. And it's a really, really good performance by, Claude Rains. Probably one of the best early ones that I've seen. So anyway, that's interesting. Audio commentary by David Del Valle as well.
It was a miniseries 10, 15 years ago, British miniseries.
Which I also never saw. And I probably should have tried to track it down for this, but I don't have time for miniseries.
Yeah, too many.
It's just too much stuff. The Spider-Woman Strikes Back. Now, this is The Spider-Woman Strikes Back was the sequel to Spider Wars. And at the end of Spider Wars, the spider web blows up. It was called the Death Spider Web. Mm-hmm. And then they decided to make the Spider-Woman Strikes Back, in which Han Spider gets frozen. Oh, forget it. Dumbest joke ever. No, this is just really, really silly, and the title should tell you exactly how silly it is. It's kind of fun to watch because it's campy.
Yeah.
And it's got a lot of extras on it. There's a documentary short and thing on makeup effects. And but otherwise it's don't confuse it with any other movie that has the same title. I think there's a Sherlock Holmes movie that has the same title, I believe, but it's not the story. Sigmund Freud biopic with Montgomery Clift and Susanna York called Freud, produced by John Huston and directed by John Huston. and written by Charles Kaufman, not to be confused with Charlie Kaufman. And it is it doesn't really have much to do with Sigmund Freud, really. It's just kind of a Montgomery Clift vehicle. But Montgomery Clift movie is better than not, so I guess okay. But whatever happened to Susanna York, by the way? When she didn't? I mean, when did she die? Do we remember?
Good question. Susanna York, about 2011.
Was it because she kind of disappeared after the 60s? I don't remember her doing much of anything in the 70s.
Yeah, well, a lot of TV stuff, but I definitely left the movies. But she was kind of like a fixture on British television there for.
Anyway, this really turned Sigmund Freud's life into an episode of Dallas or Dynasty. It's very melodramatic and kind of silly. So I wouldn't make it a high priority. But if you want to see Montgomery Clift in a biopic about Sigmund Freud, go for it.
Yeah, there you go.
So this is one that I had forgotten existed, and this is quite a lot of fun. It's called Torch Singer, starring Claudette Colbert, and it's actually quite good. It's got it's got a really, really fun cast. It is about it's kind of a pre-code movie. It was made right around that time when things went from pre-code to code, but it's basically about a woman. She's an unwed mother, and it's about her struggles with being an unwed mother and what she has to do to make ends meet. Becomes a singer, and how she, is able to sort of work her way through all of these struggles. And, the subject of being an unwed single mother in the 1930s, you could do it until about 1933. Yeah. No way in hell that you could tell that story after 1933. No. So, but what the thing is, it's not done in a salacious way. Claudette Colbert was a rock solid, legit actress, and it's quite a good film. Kat Ellinger does the audio commentary. It's a very, very good. It talks about all these issues. So Kat really kind of kills it on that one. And then the last three here, I'll just cut through real quickly. We've got Cary Grant again, along with Nancy Carroll and Randolph Scott in Hot Saturday. And this also is a pre-code film, as you would imagine, because those were the titles that they could get away with at the time. It's pretty good, actually. It's actually a pretty decent film. Nancy Carroll plays how do we put this? Cary Grant ruins her. He wrecks her. He turns her into a crazy girl. She meets him, and she goes from being a good girl to a bad girl. It was just that hot Saturday that just flipped her. It just turned her into a crazy woman. So the moral to this is, don't let your daughters date Cary Grant. That's Cary, not Gary.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, it's actually fun. It's a little silly, and it's almost like one of those hygiene films from the period. The Secret of the Blue Room with Lionel Atwill, Paul Lucas, and Gloria Stewart is also pretty fun. This is kind of a sophisticated noir, I guess, from 1933. Also feel Michael Schlesinger, our very good friend Michael Schlesinger, whom we've had as a guest on the show, does an amazing commentary. He knows this stuff inside out. This is his bailiwick. Yeah. So he just rocks it on the commentary. I would recommend this just for his commentary alone. But no, it's a good kind of sophisticated drawing room noir with a great cast, and really, really worth checking out. Made by Universal at the time. And then the last one, before we move on to other things, Edward G. Robinson in Night Has 1,000 Eyes. We don't get titles like that anymore. It's too bad. No. This is 1948. We're well into the code period. The only thing I will say about this, and this is kind of a supernatural noir. It's fine. Robinson is solid. He plays a magician in this thing, and has all kinds of issues. But the significance of this is that it was directed by a John Farrow, father of Mia.
Mia Farrow, yeah.
And one of the more noteworthy films of his filmography. So that's it. That's what we got from Kino this week. And good on them. Let's see, what else? What should we move to next?
Well, I was going to ask. It's over in the Criterions. The Celebration. What is that?
This is our Dogma. This is our Dogma.
That one.
Yep, sure is.
Ushered in that period.
This is our the film that basically sort of began Dogma outside of the Lars von Trier films. You know, Lars von Trier films are no, this is Thomas Vinterberg's
This is
Dogma from
Thomas.
2005.
Yeah.
Or from 1998, but it includes the 2005 commentary. You know what's interesting about this, Tim? I'm going to show you on the camera. So you see that?
Hold on a second.
They in the spirit of Dogma, they went with a totally bare bones packaging. This is Criterion being super cool.
Yeah.
It's a clear case. It has no artwork at all. There's no
Dogma,
artwork.
of course, for folks, was a film movement that eschewed the use of almost anything normally used in the making of films. No lighting, no artificial lighting, and very often non-actors and blah 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 and all that kind of stuff.
And you're not. And
about what 5-10 years, something like that.
I think about 5 years before everybody kind of got fed up. And
unfortunately, it kind of drove itself down to what was that movement after a mumblecore. A dog, which I'm like, if we're not even going to talk in our movies. Okay, fine.
You know, that's a really interesting analogy. That's a really interesting analogy to go from. Yeah, you're right. Mumblecore kind of grew out of Dogma in many respects. Anyway, they went really bare bones in the packaging, which is fine. You know, it's the brown bag sensibility of the whole thing. Tons of extras on here. There's a documentary from 2002 about the movement, has interviews with everybody, including, you know, von Trier and Vinterberg and Christian Levering and, you know, all of the people who were sort of central to it. A lot of documentary stuff about it. But basically you want the movie because the movie is a really twisted film.
Oh, it was quite controversial at the time. It was very controversial at the time.
Yeah. It all takes place on a guy's birthday. This guy's 60th birthday. This very, very wealthy guy. And it's just, it's almost Agatha Christie-like. You bring all these people together and you just let them go crazy and be horrible. Pretty great.
Yeah.
We got Time. Garrett Bradley's Time.
That very dark.
So good.
It's a very 20 years. He got sentenced to 60 years. She and they committed this crime in the early 90s. Robbed something, and he got 60 years. And basically, they document the entire over the course of the next 20 years, her efforts to get him out of prison. And there's a lot of radio diaries, recorded diaries,
home movies,
and it's sort of beautiful black and white film. And it's very deeply moving and kind of tragic. And I really, it's funny though. I really didn't know. I really didn't know how to feel coming away from that the film, because it's not like they didn't do it. Not like he didn't do it. They did it. But 60 years.
Well, I think I think that's the question to it which is, when you get to the subject, and it is very much a subject that is part of the cultural conversation right now of mass incarceration. There, we are still, and I think the film makes this point, we are still as an industrial society working with a pre-industrial, incarceration and justice mentality. We're still working, we're still kind of in Les Miserables, aren't we?
Yeah.
Right? It's still that mindset. And we haven't really evolved because recidivism is a serious problem. So we're at a case where it's like either we lock people up for a short period of time and they go back to a life of crime, or we lock them up forever. Rehabilitation and how to make people functioning members of society again and giving them a leg up and helping, fixing the problem. Yeah. We haven't figured that out. And I think that's kind of the conversation that you're meant to have in watching this. It doesn't have a solution, but it's meant to make you think.
Yeah. So there you go. Yeah. Anyway, that's what that was. Hard Day's Night, man. Richard
so
Lester. So what do we have that's new here out of Criterion?
It's unbelievable. We've all seen this movie. We've seen it 150 times. This is a 4K. This is a Criterion 4K. So they just knock it out of the park. It is gorgeous. Richard Lester, just come on, man, give it up. Just what a great guy. I'm hoping they'll do 4Ks of, the Three Musketeers and Four Musketeers. But, this, what do you want? The Beatles and Richard Lester on 4K. It's a beautiful thing. Loaded with extras. Absolutely loaded. The Dolby Vision HDR is to die for. Absolutely to die for. The DTS HD, truly. This is the Beatles as they were meant to be heard. It is just a wonderful, wonderful audio remix. It also includes an audio commentary with the cast and crew, which many people have heard before. And in their own voices is a 1964 collection of interviews with the Beatles and some behind-the-scenes footage of it. And there's also the making of A Hard Day's Night, which was made in 1994, which has a performance that was not included in the movie. They also have a 2002 documentary about the film that features everybody involved. There's an Oscar-nominated short that Richard Lester made in 1960 called The Running, Jumping, and Standing Still. There's another television program from 2014 all about how Richard Lester worked. I mean, it's, and that's just scratching the surface. There's a ton of other stuff here. So, I mean, if you have a 4K machine and you love the Beatles and you love Richard Lester, you would be, it would be sacrilegious to not absolutely jump all over that.
Yeah.
Kirsten Johnson's film Dick Johnson is Dead is now out on Blu-ray as a Criterion. This was made a couple of years ago. This is such an odd film, and I never would have pegged this to be a Criterion, but that's always kind of the fun thing, right? It's basically the director Kirsten Johnson wanted to make a movie about her dad.
Yeah, who's not dead, by the way.
who's not dead, but he's it's the long goodbye. He is passing from dementia, and he will eventually pass from dementia.
Yeah.
And so this is a really, really very brave way of wrestling with that in a very public way. And it's funny in ways that you sometimes feel guilty about laughing at, right?
Yeah.
But it's human too, and I thought it was a very tender and interesting and unusual film, and I think it's terrific. It's got a lot of great extras on it. She has a conversation with some of the other filmmakers, and there's an audio commentary that features her and some of her collaborators. So it's Dick Johnson is Dead by Kirsten Johnson. And then the one that I really, really want to rave about here, because I believe this is on Criterion Channel this month too. Another 4K. Oh my gosh, this is gorgeous. Freaking amazing. One of the greatest movies I've ever seen. It was like the highlight of my first year or my second year at the Cannes Film Festival in 1993. Jane Campion's The Piano.
Oh yeah.
So here was when everyone wanted to see this, right? I remember going to the Cannes Film Festival in 93. This wound up sharing the award with, Chen Kaiga's Farewell My Concubine, which was my other favorite film that year.
Yeah.
Both of them just perfect. And I remember going to the press conference for Body Snatchers with Abel Ferrara, which I've talked about before, where he gets into it, with Alexander Walker. But the first thing that Abel Ferrara said as he sat down was, hey, did you hear? They just, Jane Campion just arrived and they gave her the Palme d'Or on the tarmac. And everyone laughed because that was the conversation before the festival. Jane Campion had won the Palme d'Or for her short film. So she's coming back after having made Sweetie and An Angel at My Table. And now this is, and everybody, the buzz on this thing was, it's going to win the Palme d'Or. Like the surprise was that it had to share it with another film. That was the surprise. No one expected any other film to win it that year. There was no mystery. Jane Campion, The Piano, first woman to win a Palme d'Or. It's going to happen. Locked. And sure enough, it wound up being just exactly the poetic, beautiful, amazing movie that everyone expected. And how often does that happen?
Oh, it's just exquisite. Interesting that, Jane is back with the Power of the Dog.
This year,
right now, Benedict Cumberbatch, all that film streaming on something. What is it? It's streaming someplace.
It's Netflix. Netflix.
And I enjoy The Power of the Dog, like that good performance by Benedict. The Piano is still Jane Campion's,
it's her masterpiece.
And I'm a big fan of Sweetie and Angel at My Table too. To be honest, I even like Bright Star quite a lot.
I love Bright Star, dude. I love Bright Star so much.
So deeply appreciate The Power of the Dog, but it is interesting to me that of all of those Jane Campion films, it's like fifth on my list of all of my favorite Jane Campion films.
Yeah.
But that's what we're doing.
Well, it is gorgeous. It is 4K. It just kills it in every conceivable way. The music has never been more beautiful. That Michael Nyman music, which by the way was not nominated for score, if you can believe that. Michael Nyman is not popular with other composers. I just want to point that out. there's a reason why this was not nominated in the one category it absolutely had to be, which is that incredible score by Michael Nyman. But, other composers dislike him. But there are interviews in here with everybody involved. The Maori advisor is really fascinating to hear from. Just really fascinating. Power of the Dog was all shot in New Zealand too, by the way.
Yeah.
You know that, right?
Yeah.
It's New Zealand doubling for the Dakotas. It's crazy. And there's even the Water Diary, Jane Campion's 2006 short film here, which in many respects kind of inspires aspects of this. Also, I want to point out Stuart Dryburgh, who shot this, has become the premier cinematographer right now, because Stuart Dryburgh also shot Dune.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And he may also have shot the Batman for Matt, I think. As we double check on that. But yeah, anyway, Stuart Dryburgh he's shooting all the big stuff now. He has just become the go-to guy. And you can see why, because the piano is so sweet and beautiful, and it's just absolutely magnificent. Few things from Arrow, real quickly, as long as we're on Criterion. Let's see. Sailor Suit and Machine Gun. Excuse me. Sailor Suit and Machine Gun is basically a wild and crazy cartoony Yakuza movie from Shinji Somai. And it's totally unhinged, as many of those Yakuza movies are, but it's got that it has that weird kind of cartoony, pulpy quality to it. It's based on a novel which I am not familiar with, by Yiro Akagawa. But it's very culty in Japan. But it's about a girl who becomes the head of a Yakuza clan, basically, and man, she just lives it to the hilt.
I love it when that happens.
Yeah, don't let the girl run the thing, because she'll be crazier than the guys. But anyway, it's quite cute, if I can say that. A lot of extras on here, including a 50-minute documentary all about the people involved and everything. It's pretty terrific. So Sailor Suit and Machine Gun. Really bloody and violent, but it's fun at the same time. And then, as long as we're on the subject of Japanese movies, another one here is The Snake Girl and the Silver-Haired Witch.
Yeah,
which you're going to be surprised to know this, Tim. You know what this is about? It's about a snake girl and a silver-haired witch.
In the 60s, these things were all very literal. I think it was like late 60s, right?
That's exactly what it's about. It's a crazy Japanese horror film, kind of a ghosty horror film about this girl who, that leaves an orphanage and goes back to her estranged family, and you don't want to do that. You kind of want to send her back to the orphanage because she's better off without the family. This is a weird, creepy, oftentimes very, very funny kind of kitschy Japanese exploitation horror film, and enjoy it if you can. Michael Venus did Sleep. You ever see Sleep?
Yeah.
This is a new one to me. I don't know how I missed this one, but
it's a horror film. The girl in her dreams, the whole thing. Yeah, that kind of creepy little movie. I can't remember why I saw it, but it worked. Yeah,
it's tons of extras on this, but yeah, it's a story about a little girl and her nightmares, and it just slipped right past my radar. But anyway, tons of extras on here that kind of get into the whole issues of dreams and their dream researchers, and you get a lot of that here. It's very much about the reality of dreams and nightmares and how that inspired the film, and where the inspirations come from. Everybody from David Lynch to Franz Kafka to Mario Bava and on and on. Nice limited edition of the movie Sleep by Michael Venus from Arrow. And then the last two, speaking of Mario Bava, we're going to talk about Shock, Mario Bava's Shock. I'm just going to say I hate this movie. I do. I thoroughly hate this movie, but I know a lot of people love it. So, there you go. Knock yourselves out. But it was supposed to be kind of a sequel to the movie Beyond the Door.
Oh yeah,
and which Mario Bava did not make, by the way. No. It was not a Mario Bava film, but it was made as kind of a sequel to that film, which was made by some other Italian filmmaker. and it's just nasty. It's nasty, but and again, deals with nightmares and hallucinations, and it's a lot of the similar kind of stuff. But it's nasty. I didn't like it at all. And then there's Red Angel, another Japanese horror film, directed by Yasuzo Masamura, who did all those cool kind of exploity films, Giants and Toys and Blind Beast. And this is just one of those horrible Japanese horror films that picks someone you should trust, like a military nurse, and proceeds to destroy every single last shred of trust that you might possibly have. So there it is, and the Japanese just love to do that kind of stuff. It all takes place in 1939, on the eve of the rest of World War II. Japan has already invaded China, and it just makes it makes it all worse.
The movie's from the 60s, but it takes place in
correct. Yes,
but those movies in the man, I don't know. I think the Japanese were actually, for lack of a better word, better at this stuff than the Italians.
By far. By far, for sure. Let's do, what else should we hit up? We got 4Ks, we got TV.
I was thinking of some TV there. That's I saw, what did I see? Spine of the Night, that 4K in 4K. Yeah. Which is, again, ultraviolet.
Yeah.
It's, and it was really, really, it reminded me of that sort of, heavy metal sort of stuff, and you got Lucy Lawless's voice and Peyton Oswald's voice and Richard E. Grant and this woman, and she's just naked. This is animation now. Yeah, she's just naked throughout this whole thing. It's got the pubic hair and the underarm hair, and it's made to just be as crunchy as it possibly can be, and people's heads or limbs are cut off. It's just as vicious. It's just ultra violent movie. Well, a lot of interesting voices in it. I couldn't get into it. And our colleague over at Film Week, Charles Solomon, he warned me off, but I had to go in, and man, wow. But some folks really love this stuff, and but I can't deal with it. At all.
Well, it's 4K Steelbook, originally aired on Shudder.
Oh man.
Yeah. As long as we're speaking about that, let me just kick over to Blue Underground's alt 4K. We're talking about some nasty stuff right now. As long as we're coming out of all this stuff, But another 4K from Shudder, not from Shudder, from Blue Underground, of the Toolbox Murders, which is also, speaking of nudity and gore, there's a lot of that in this one too. But this is it's interesting to me they would choose this for a 4K release because it's an exploitation film. It's kind of one of the original gore exploitation films, and I wouldn't expect anybody would want to see more detail in this, but I guess the nudity probably triggers that. It's really, really well done. I mean, it's really good. You would think, it's not going to gain anything from the 4K, but they went back to the original elements, and they meticulously scanned the original negative. They, tweaked the Dolby Vision HDR. They really did a great new mix. And, you know what? I mean, it'll never make you want to hire another handyman.
It's basically a guy in a ski mask running around an apartment building the whole complex, just with a toolbox, killing people with the various different things that you can kill somebody with in the toolbox. That's what it is.
This is how I describe this film. Imagine if one Sunday evening, you and your family settle in around, I want to say about 1979. You want to watch the CBS lineup, Jeffersons and Alice, and you're really laughing. And One Day at a Time comes on. One day at a time.
Pat Harrington.
and imagine that Pat Harrington is Schneider, shows up at the door with that smile and proceeds to pull out his tools and murder Bonnie Franklin in the goriest possible way.
And then Valerie Bertinelli, and then everybody. Just everybody.
There we go.
That's the movie. Yeah,
that's the movie. Yeah. There we go.
Oh man. Fritz the cat.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, let me get over to that. Hold on.
Ralph Bakshi. Speaking again of that, because it lives in that same zone.
As long as we're going with
we're doing it,
we're going to go there.
But not enough credit goes to Robert Crumb, though, because we think about Fritz, we think about Robert, but Ralph Bakshi, but Robert Crumb created those characters, and so say his name a couple times. Yeah,
for sure. Fritz the Cat and the 9 Lives of Fritz the Cat, both of them based on R. Crumb characters and then turned into movies that Ralph Bakshi wrote and directed. And when you combine those two animated talents, you get some pretty twisted stuff. Fritz the Cat was famous for being the first X-rated animated movie, and that really broke a lot of people's brains at the time.
Yeah.
These are actually Scorpion releases through Kino Lorber. And we're talking about some twisted animation today, folks. Pretty twisted animation. Sorry about that.
Rosetta Lenore, who's this wonderful black actress, who, if you watch television, you saw her on Family. She played the grandmother, Mother Winslow on Family Matters. That's where most people would know her from. Yeah, elderly black woman. She does the voice of Bertha and Fritz the Cat. I just knowing that she is, and Bertha says some foul shit because, X-rated movie in that movie. And she plays, just knowing that the grandmother from Family Matters is doing that voice just cracks me up. But she did all kinds of great stuff. She's in Brewster's Millions and The Brother from Another Planet. She's a wonderful black actress from way back in the day. But yeah, she's the voice in Fritz the Cat. That's just
it is effectively just a satire of the period and it's social mores and it's taboos and everything else. And that's all that Crumb and Bakshi wanted to do. This was Bakshi's directing debut, his feature debut, by the way. And that's all these movies are designed to do is just, poke a hole in the culture and really annoy people. The 9 Lives of Fritz the Cat, not as good. No. It is, and largely because, Ralph Bakshi did not have anything to do with it. This was Sam Arkoff, whom we knew very well. We interviewed, for Schlock. He kind of, so Steve Krantz originally was the guy who put all of this together. Steve Krantz was the producer of the original one. And then, when it became clear that Bakshi didn't want to make another one, Krantz still had the rights, and Krantz went to Sam Arkoff and said, if I could put another one together, would you distribute it? And so that's how it happened. And, instead of being like a semi-mainstream release, it became a Sam Arkoff production with Steve Krantz, directed by a guy named Robert Taylor, who is by no means anything close to Ralph Bakshi, and without Crumb being involved in any way whatsoever. So it's it doesn't compare to the original, but they've been released together, so you can compare them, and it still tries to satirize things a little bit. Still tries to sort of poke holes in the politics. It's not, the one was made in 72. The sequel was made in 74. In the middle there, you kind of have Watergate blow up. Yeah. So there's a little bit of that's referenced as well. So, it's an interesting comparison between the two films.
Yeah.
Let's talk Billions, season 5.
Yeah. They got a new, the season 5 introduced a new, cause Damien left the show, right?
He's still here in season 5.
Season 5.
Has he left the show now?
Yeah, and they got another guy that Paul Giamatti. Is it Paul Giamatti? I always confuse. Is going up against now. So
see, that's the problem, is that they set this thing up as a collision between these two guys.
Yeah.
And I don't know that you can sustain that season. You
can't.
Season after season.
You can't. And somebody has to win one day.
Yeah.
So anyway, but no, they had to milk it.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it's well written, it's well made, but I do think that fundamental tension is a little bit too simplistic. So, Showtime's Billions season 5. And this also features Juliana Margulies, who is wonderful, and I think, if anything, underused. But Damian Lewis,
man, Billions always, to my mind, the nature of the show takes itself a little bit more seriously than, say, Succession, which is ludicrous, and knows it's ludicrous, and there it is, But Billions is like, you guys are just, they don't seem to realize that this is dumb.
See, this is the thing. They set this show up, and you realize that neither of these guys is ever going to die.
Yeah.
If anything, they're going to leave the show, apparently.
Yeah.
So as opposed to something like Ozark, where really I've given up trying to predict who's going to survive that thing, because just when you think that somebody's become too big to die, they get a bullet in the head.
They're out.
and they do that all the time on Ozark. And I'm like, oh, damn. Did you really? And sometimes on Ozark, not to give anything away, but sometimes you'll have a show where one person will kill somebody and you think, oh, see, now we've inherited. Oh, damn, that person just died, and the person that killed the other person then gets killed, and you're like, I give up. You're just messing with me now. Like now you're just laughing at me. Now you're just laughing at me.
I love it. We will not allow you to get attached to anybody here.
Oh my gosh. So Tim, I hate to go to you on this, man, but seriously, the All Black Network.
Yes.
So we got 2 shows there. House Divided in season 3 and For the Love of Jason season 1. How does this grow out of BET? And do these shows get a significant audience? That's
well, BET, TV1, those networks don't really have all that much of significant audiences, but the audiences that they do have watch these shows. X percent of the sort of Black and Latinx population too, are kind of into that stuff. So, it's significant in that everybody who they want to watch is watching.
That's an interesting way of putting it.
That's the way those things kind of work. As opposed to like saying, what was the CW before it was the CW, the Warner Bros. Or Warner.
Oh gosh, it was the WB.
The WB.
Yeah.
Thank you. And there was this moment when the WB, was full. LL Cool J had a show on there. The Wayans brothers, who are all middle-aged men now, when they were young, had a show on there. There was just all of these Black shows on there. You remember that period?
I do, and that's kind of where my question was, which is that I know enough actors from enough different backgrounds. National backgrounds, accents, and Hispanic and Black and Asian, and I've had this conversation with them, and there's a real sensitivity, and you can tell me if I'm wrong on this or if I've missed, but there's a real sensitivity about they don't want to do the stuff that is race specific or national specific. They want to break out of that pigeonhole.
The ghettoizing, for lack of a better word.
It's like German actors hate having to play Nazis in everything, right?
Yeah.
And this goes all the way back to Otto Preminger was he was playing Nazis on just about every movie forever. I mean, that's why he liked directing, because he could direct anything. But as an actor, he always has to play Nazis and mad scientists or whatever.
And wear that monocle.
And
I suppose that some of the difference is it has to do with the nature of the thing. So if you go back to the middle 70s or the early 70s, Good Times, right? And this poor Black family living in the ghetto and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. A lot of Black folks could not stand that. It was the contextualization. Fast forward 10 years, 1980, whatever the hell it is, when the Cosby Show comes on. This is an all Black show. But it's an all Black show. He's a doctor. She's a lawyer. The kids are all going to whatever they're doing in college. It's this sort of middle class show. Or family. I think we just talked about Family Matters. Same thing. He's just a cop in Family Matters. He's not a doctor. And it's just this middle class, mostly Black show. And that's the shape. It's the shape of it that matters.
Every show that you've named, from Good Times to The Jeffersons to The Cosby Show to Sanford and Son. I mean, we could go right down the line, but these are all network shows that were aired in prime time to a national audience, and which did not. No one ever said, "Oh, these are Black shows for Black people." I mean, I remember sitting every single Sunday with my very white parents and my German immigrant mother watching The Jeffersons and loving it, and watching my father laugh himself to tears, and watching my mother, my German mother, just absolutely adore every character on that show.
Yeah.
And she especially enjoyed, every time George gets into it with the maid,
Marla Gibbs.
Marla Gibbs. Oh my gosh, Marla Gibbs was my mother's favorite character. And you know why? Because my mother had been a nanny. My mother knew what it meant to be a domestic, and she related to that, right? So there's a crossover thing with this, where there's these universal things. And that's why I'm wondering, if this is a great on-ramp for a lot of these actors. I mean, to be able to get onto an all-Black show, you can build a reel, you can, hone your skills and so forth. But is there a risk that you are becoming identified with something that'll make it harder to cross over when the time comes?
It could possibly be. But you also get this very specific thing of where you will bring with you always a whole audience of people who know who you are.
Great.
But that thing that you were talking about with the Jeffersons, any given episode of the Jeffersons was literally seen by more people, black, white, everybody, because that's back when we were still, 30 share. You do a 30 share, right? A 30 share was usually 30 million people. The numbers were equivalent. 30 million people of like you said, your mom, everybody watched the Jeffersons, as opposed to those shows that you're holding there. First of all, nowhere near 30 million people. I'm not even sure there's 30 million black people in America. But if all of the black people in America watched it, it wouldn't be 30 million people. But everybody who is watching it, not everybody, 99% of the folks who are watching those shows are black or Latinx. I doubt that many of the equivalent of your mother in 1978 or whatever we were talking about will ever see those shows because they live in those pipelines. That's why.
Well, we're talking about House Divided season 3 with the most recognizable name here is Lars Hilton Jacobs, who plays the kind of the patriarch of the Sanders family in this thing, and it's a little Dynasty-ish, a little bit like Empire, except not Empire.
Yeah. Sherman, our buddy Sherman, Stranger Things, and the actor, all we talk about. Yeah. Sherman won't do them. He gets offers. Of course not. He gets offers all the time. He won't even read the script.
Well, he shouldn't. He's on Stranger Things too.
Yeah. There you go.
There's no way. That's a step down. And then For the Love of Jason, season 1, which is a new show about life. I hate always saying that, but he's a young guy, and it's time to kind of start living, and what is he going to do? Is he going to get married? Is he going to keep being single? And all that kind of stuff, which was a little bit like That Girl in 1974, or maybe even the Mary Tyler Moore Show. So it's that kind of thing centered around a guy. I can't tell. I wouldn't really know what to make of a whole season of this, but it's a show, and somebody created it, and they're making money. And
yes, and I go there too. Even as I poke these things, I'm thinking to myself, these people are all working. Those are a bunch of Writers Guild writers who wrote. And I'm like, so maybe I need to shut up.
That's another thing that Iger says in that podcast interview. He says everybody's writing and everybody's working, and I'm thinking, well, I'm not.
It's interesting.
So why don't you point me in the right direction? And then season 1 of the Gomorrah series based on the movie.
Oh yeah.
Also from Kino Lorber. This is Sight and Sound's quote on this is printed right on the cover, which is Italy's answer to Breaking Bad. I'm not sure that that's quite that accurate. I mean, I get what they're trying to do. They're looking to make a connection and get that Breaking Bad audience into this. It's 12 episodes. It's a really potent show. I think the show's better than the movie. I'm not a big fan of the movie, to be honest. But it's it's more of a, I don't know how to even compare this. I mean, it's maybe Ozark is even a better one. I mean, it is indeed all about this horrible crime family in Naples, and you can't even really compare it to The Sopranos. It's not as sort of tame as The Sopranos. It's really violent. I mean, it's really violent. Yeah. It really shocks you. But it's designed to. And the one thing I will say about it is, even though it's very gritty, and I don't know where this thing is going to go as a series, but I do like it better than the movie, and I do think the production value is top notch. It is better than most Italian movies these days, which I never thought I'd say.
And then you got Animal Kingdom.
Oh yeah,
that's
crime families.
Crime family. Now, of course, that was a movie.
Yeah, great movie, Australian
movie, but the movie is better than the series.
Yes, the movie is
the other way around.
Is.
Yeah,
that's true. I mean, also a crime family stories, but part of the problem here is they transplanted it to the U.S.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it works better when you leave it in Australia, but I get what they did. I get why they did it, and I kind of feel like they're this is in its 5th season now, and it's kind of treading water. I've watched this intermittently over the course of the 5 seasons, and it really does now feel like they're starting to repeat themselves. Ozark, to its credit, realizes that if it runs any longer than this current season, that's going to start to repeat itself. We've pretty much stretched Ozark as far as we can go. It's in the 4th season. They got, they stretched that out to 14 episodes, the first 7 of which are already on Netflix. And rather shocking. Have you watched any of that yet?
Not yet. I'm way behind.
Dude, I'll tell you, the last 5 minutes of episode 7, wow. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, that's Animal Kingdom. Riverdale.
Yeah.
Also in its 5th season.
I never cared for what they did to my Archies, man. In this wacky show, I just I'm like it's your Archies. Why are you taking my Archies all dark? Why are they all? It's so whatever.
It's like, who pitches that? I got a great pitch for you. We're going to take the Archies, right? The comedy animated show that a whole generation loves because they were sweet and funny and animated. And we're going to basically do, make them serious and brooding and not animated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I don't understand. That's like the opposite of the Lower Decks. Like, we're going to take Star Trek and we're going to turn it into Family Guy. Like, who comes up with this stuff? I don't get it. Anyway, 5th season of Riverdale also seems to be a little bit running on fumes.
Yeah.
A few minutes that we have left. Let's just, we have Night Gallery season 1.
Yeah.
Night Gallery season 1 out on Blu-ray, which is a welcome thing. This has been out several times previously. I'm just going to tell people you got to get this one. You got to double dip and get rid of the previous ones because this has some wonderful audio commentaries on it. Really, really great stuff on so many of these episodes. And it's Night Gallery. It's like full color Twilight Zone. I don't know how you don't get that. It's really, really great.
Yeah.
From Acorn TV, Finding Alice, series 1. This is very, very sweet and lovely and awesome and pretty great.
Yeah.
This is it's a single woman. How do I describe this without kind of blowing the setup?
Oh, yeah.
It's another one of these how do you restart life movies.
Yeah.
Or a series, sorry. It's 6 episodes, British drama. And a woman who, for reasons that I won't get into, has to kind of reinvent her life and all of her relationships and carry on. And it's done in a really, really sweet, poignant way and has a really, really great supporting cast. Gemma Jones is in it.
Oh, Jonah Lumley.
It's a really, really sweet show. Keely Hawes is the star. She's absolutely terrific. And, I can't wait to see more of it. That's series 1. The Last Tycoons is a documentary series all about the great French producers of the new wave period and both before and after who basically kind of defined what we understand as French cinema today. And they always get overlooked because the filmmakers are the ones that you focus on in France.
Yeah.
So, these are people like Anatole Dauman and Alain Poiret and Jacques Perrin, a lot of others. These are the guys who sort of took a back seat, let the filmmakers step up. They pulled the money together. They pulled the talent together. They made the deals happen and they let everybody else kind of take the glory. And now this is their chance to sort of, shine through. So it's a really, really great 8-part, documentary series from Icarus Films. And you'll learn a lot about, French movies of the last 40, 50, 60 years. It's really, really very interesting and a lot of interesting movies talked about. So good film education.
Yeah.
Kamen Rider 01 is one of these live action kind of quasi anime shows that is a step up from Ultraman, barely.
Yeah.
Have you watched anything like this?
No.
It's kind of I sort of enjoy it, but I'm not proud of that. It's a little bit RoboCop-y too. Anyway, it's 46 episodes, a Japanese series, all about this company that has taken AI to the next level and created these robots that look like villains from Power Rangers. And it's all about the fallout of that and the interface between humans and what they call, huma gears. And yeah, it feels very RoboCop-y, very Power Ranger-y, very Ultraman-y, but for reasons that I just can't quite figure out, I can't be snarky about it. I kind of enjoy it. It's sort of got a weird edge to it, a kind of cyberpunky edge that's really cool. So anyway, that's on Blu-ray. That's Kamen Rider 01. And it's the complete series with real X time, which I have no idea what that actually even is, but there it is. There it is. Tim, let's just hang it up with these last 3 4Ks. Last Night in Soho. Did you get a chance to watch Last Night in Soho?
Yeah. Songs for the radio show. Edgar there. This very stylish production. Young woman goes off to Soho in London to become a designer. And years earlier, her mother had done the same thing and it didn't go well. And now her auntie doesn't really want her to go, but she goes anyway. And she takes this room in this house and she starts having these dreams and transport her back to 1969, where she's experiencing this sort of mirrored life. It's a really complicated story, and it's okay. What I like most about it is Diana Rigg, Mrs. Peel. Is in it. This elderly woman that runs this house, and she's just as fabulous and delightful in this as she ever was as Mrs. Peel. She just stayed that way her whole entire life. We lost her, I guess, last year, right? Maybe. Something like that.
It was just not too many months ago.
Not too many months ago. So the wonderful, but it's an okay movie. It's no Baby Driver or anything like that, but it's an all right little movie.
Well, that's on 4K, and it's beautiful on 4K. It's absolutely stunning. It comes with the Movies Anywhere code and the whole thing. And Edgar Wright really was supposed to be our director of Ant-Man, and he had a falling out. So he moved on to things like Baby Driver and Last Night in Soho, and he hasn't rejoined the MCU, but he's paved himself a very, very nice little career.
Yeah.
The last 2 4Ks here, The Lover, the great, amazing French film based on the novel by, oh my gosh, Tim, I'm drawing a total blank right now.
Who is it? For fuck's sake.
It's
Duras.
Yes, thank you, Marguerite Duras.
Duras,
Marguerite Duras. Yeah. Thank you. Gosh, this is what these shows do to me. They just suck my brain out. Based on the great Marguerite Duras novel. Yeah. I actually saw this in Paris, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was like this, like 90.
92, I think it was.
Yeah, okay.
It was 92, and I was on my way to my first Cannes Film Festival. There it is again, but. This really kind of got ripped for its as being kind of soft-corey. Yeah, and I think people misunderstood exactly the what Marguerite Duras was. But I actually think this is a very, very it's a beautiful film. Yeah. Jean-Jacques Annaud just directs the hell out of it. Yeah. What it does is, it captures a time and place, which is this 1920s period in French colonial Indochina, and how what the cultural landscape was pre-war, before things disintegrated in the 1950s, and how Indo-Chinese / Vietnamese society and culture and French culture, where they were able to sort of merge and sit comfortably and where they weren't, and how it all kind of folds in with this particular very taboo relationship, which involves an underage French girl and an Indo-Chinese man played by, and it was funny. And I shouldn't say this on the podcast, but I remember talking to a friend of mine, a producer, a very, very heterosexual producer, who saw the movie and was so floored at how sexy Tony Leung is in this. And this is the other Tony Leung. This is, Tony Leung Ka-Fai, as they say in Hong Kong, not the Tony Leung from the John Woo film. Yeah. And I remember he came back and he was he was saying sort of lascivious things to me about, like, even I wanted to touch him. He just looks so good in this. He looks so good. He's so beautifully shot. So anyway, this is on 4K. It's an unexpected kind of custom 4K. Did not see this coming, but I think it's a great thing for the 4K format, this is out, because now it sort of says it's okay. You can take, you can go to 4K with foreign films and independent films and horror films and everything else. And, between the Toolbox Murders and The Lover in the same week on 4K, I think 4K has gone mainstream.
Yeah, perhaps it has. Super duper young Jane March in that movie.
Gosh, she's so good.
A couple of years later, she was in that unfortunate Color of Night.
Yeah,
Bruce Willis movie, and Kamen did her career there for a while. But
indeed, that's too bad. And then Halloween Kills, the extended cut. I think you covered this on the radio too. Didn't you?
I
I'm
did.
Sorry.
That's okay.
What do we need this? Did we need another Halloween? Do we need it on 4K? First of all,
well, look, the thing, because so this movie, the one thing that this movie did is it picks up literally where the other movie left off. You remember how Halloween 1 and then Halloween 2 literally picks up. They're right there. That's what that movie did. This movie tries to do the same thing. It ignores a bunch of Halloweens. There've been a bunch of Halloweens. There were even remakes of Halloween. So it has to ignore a bunch of movies in order to reconnect itself to the original lineage of the films. But no, it does this thing of where it tries to connect. This is what's his name? David Gordon Green.
Yeah,
I'm like, why are you even over here in this genre?
I cannot figure out his career. The guy, this is the guy who made George Washington.
Oh, this beautiful, dramatic little movie.
Gosh, you're like the new Malik. And then he goes off and he does stuff like,
Your Highness.
Your Highness is like, what? And now this, like, dude, get back on track. What is wrong?
But you know what? He made this drama called Snow Angels, I think. Very dramatic film. Something like that. Did make a nickel. Sam Rockwell, all kinds of it. And I think that scared the crap out of him. And he wouldn't start hanging out with boys and making these goofy movies. So, whatever. If you want to live inside the sort of Halloween lineage, the one thing that movie does do is connect it back to those original two films. And you can just sort of like pretend like the other movies don't exist.
Yeah. Well, there it is. And then very, very lastly, I want to make mention of The Great Postal Heist, which is this really interesting doc. People should check out. This is from Cinema Libre Studios, and I don't want to, badmouth the post office. We all, the post office takes a lot of hits.
Yeah.
But this is basically centering on the director's father. Jay Gallione is the director of this thing. And his father was a postal clerk for 30 years and endured a horribly toxic workplace culture for just being a decent guy. And this is kind of an expose of the hostility of that culture. And it really does help you understand how the postal system is manipulated in our governmental structure, who kind of uses it for what, and how it becomes a political football, and how its financing becomes political football. And you also understand where the phrase "go postal" comes from, because it literally has driven people to the edge. And it gets to that. It gets kind of to the root of all of that stuff in a very, very interesting way, and a very troubling way.
It's very pointed. The doc is very pointed in saying that this has to do with the sort of systematic dismantling of this in privatization, and there's a group of people who want to do that. And I don't know. For me, it's very, very simple. Ben Franklin founded the post office. Ben Franklin knew exactly what he was doing and exactly how he wanted it to be done. And for whatever reason, when we decided we wanted to undo that, we just made a mess of the whole entire thing.
And part of it is, again, that these are all of these pressures that are always threatening the post office with this, threatening it with that, threatening it with this. And there's no sort of stability with the post office because they're always under the threat of some political manipulation. So, I remember talking to our local guy here who before he retired, I knew him very, very well. And I would ask him, I'd be like, they'd always roll their eyes. He's like, man, everybody in the post office hates the people that run the post office. They do. It's like, because they don't ever do what's right for the rank and file. And I said, well, what's the solution? He says, raise postage rates.
Yeah.
And not a lot.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. You just sometimes have to raise the rates a little bit, but they tinker with things, and then they have these deals with FedEx. Anyway, it's all this other stuff. But, anyway. It's a solid doc, and it's something you should be familiar with just to better understand at a minimum the inner workings of what is probably the most daily the one federal agency that we have the most interaction with daily. Yeah. I mean, literally the post office comes to your house
every day.
Just
about every day. Yeah, it's about yeah.
That's the part of the government you interact with the most. And, whether you got kids in school or not, whether you have Medicare or not, you interact with the post office.
All I know is this. Across my young life, I could write a letter to my grandmother, in Tennessee, and I could literally just put, a Sally Taylor, Route 10, Tennessee. That letter got to my grandmother.
There it is.
And FedEx can't do that. FedEx, that will break FedEx. But that letter always got to my grandmother because I don't know what that is about the post office, but it worked that way. So anyway, there we go.
There it is. Yeah. All right. Well, with that, we've done a long show today, but it's been good. It's been a few weeks. So, Tim, I think, let's, when we come back, we'll be talking about Oscar nominations and see, I have no predictions to make this year. I mean, I know Belfast will be in there. I know Licorice Pizza will be in there. Couldn't tell you what else is going to be in there.
Well, it's a weird time. I'm thinking King Richard is still going to be. People will still be talking about that.
You think so? Do you think people remember that, or is it too commercial?
People like Will Smith. I'll put it like that.
Yeah.
And people have been thinking to themselves, we really need to do something special for Will Smith for a long time now. So I think that because this is really inside baseball, man. This has less to do with the actual film going public this year than it ever has. The actual film going public and what the film going public, thinks and has done and will do and all that kind of stuff is less connected. It's always an inside thing, but generally speaking, you'd have a Black Panther or something out there that made a couple of quadrillion dollars and the Academy would pay attention to that. That movie over there made a lot of money. But other than that Spider-Verse movie and Bond made a few bucks. But you can't really, give best pictures to either one of those films. House of Gucci didn't happen. Last Duel didn't happen. All these big ones that they thought Stillwater didn't happen. So, it's a troublesome situation, bro.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is indeed. It's going to be very interesting. I mean, the question marks for me have been the really commercial films, and I'm curious as to whether they will be rewarded. I don't think any Marvel films are going to be in the mix. Dune in tech categories, yes.
Yes.
Will it make it in the others? Mm-hmm. King Richard, certainly one of my favorite movies of the year, but I think outside of Will Smith, anything, those are the question marks. I don't know, but I will be shocked if we don't see something big for both Belfast and Licorice Pizza. Those are the two that I think are going to get a lot of love.
And which is fine, right? So both of those movies, good movies, both of them, right? But if you think about it again with respect to, the big movie going public, most of the movie going public have never heard of Licorice Pizza, let alone seen it.
And this is why coming back, this is why I think eventually the Oscars are going to have to say, you got to be in 100 theaters. You got to be in 100 theaters. For people to know what the movie is, for them to have made an effort to see it, and therefore make an effort to watch a TV show celebrating these movies, you have to get more of those movies into more theaters and get people out to see them. You just have to. It's the only way the Oscars will survive. All right,
brother.
Tim, have a great one. Everybody, we'll see you next time.